That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. All right, welcome back to The Pulse. We are live at eduWeb, and I'm sitting down with Sara Wallace, the VP of Strategy at Simpson Scarborough, who is hot off of her eduWeb session this afternoon, which was called Bringing Balance to the Higher Ed Brand. Sara, hello, welcome to The Pulse. How did the session go, and how are you doing?
Thanks so much, Mallory. The session was a great discussion on brand and performance marketing, a lot of engagement and conversation around some of the biggest challenges that institutions of any size and type are facing in today's industry, as well as a lot of the marketing and media evolutions that have occurred both pre and post-pandemic, which just sort of increase the pressures that institutions have today to engage with their audiences in the right ways and create the right brand experience.
So let's dig into some of the key points from your session, because the majority of the folks who are listening today were probably not able to come to Philly this week for eduWeb, and we want them to get all the goodies. So before we started recording, you were filling me in on these three different factors and the fact that the media landscape is always changing. So let's take each factor in turn. And you noted the first one is increased competition. I could take that a lot of different ways. So what do you mean by increased competition, and why does it matter in this context of building brands?
Yeah, increased competition can mean a few things. There were really a couple of core data points that we pulled up when talking about increased competition when it comes to media and marketing and higher education today. The first being this really consistent conversation around the enrollment cliff. The population size of traditional first-year students is shrinking. It's projected to shrink by up to 15% by 2026. So a very valid conversation is that there's just more competition growing to capture this audience. Now, there's more audiences to engage with, but definitely a big factor at play for many institutions today. Paired with that decline in that traditional population, we also have the significant increase in overall marketing and media spend in every industry. It's projected that there will be $870 billion in paid media by 2027. And so audiences are getting hammered with advertising every single day. It increases the cost of media because platforms know they can charge more with increased spend. And you have a decline in audience attention spans. Another critical point when it comes to increased competition, when we think about that declining population and the increase in media spend overall, is that many institutions in our CMO study, regardless of size, reported a plateau or a decrease in their overall spend or investment in marketing and media. Large and small size institutions alike reported that plateau or decline. And so they have less resources to work with and they have more competition in the market. And so that's just been a growing challenge over time for many institutions.
I want to dig into this idea of having less and needing to do more. Literally just did an episode with almost that exact topic a couple weeks ago with my co-host Seth Odell. And one of the things that he recommended in that episode was that you should focus on the lowest part of your funnel, because that's where you can drive a lot of conversions, and particularly in paid media. But I think you have a different perspective on this, and I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think the bottom portion of the conversion funnel is critically important. I think the thought that I have when you say that that's Seth's point of view is what that looks like. What that looks like for us is what we have found in running the campaigns that we've run over the past several years, and the media experience that we bring within and outside higher ed, is that actually investing more paid media dollars in your brand at the higher stages of the funnel actually drives more high quality conversion at the lower end of the funnel. We are seeing audiences today reporting more and more that understanding, being familiar with a brand, knowing the value or perceived reputation of a brand does drive their interaction or their intent to interact with a brand on any channel, paid or organic. So the more that we do that at the top of the funnel and enhancing the perception and reputation and creating a strong brand experience, the more we're actually moving those quality leads to the lower end of the funnel. When it comes to really low-end paid media conversion, like on paid search, which is an example that came up in our presentation, critically important placement in an integrated campaign strategy. The way that we approach it is that when we approach the brand the right way and we have the right creative and the right messaging in place, we place less emphasis on paid search and being that number one ranking, and rather we place more emphasis on the strategic setup of the ad. What are we saying in the ad? What are the keywords that we're focused on showing up for? What are the negative keywords that we don't want to show up for? So still really important, but I think the way that we approach that low funnel is really by starting at the top.
And I think this leads us into maybe your second factor. We've already acknowledged that the media landscape is changing frequently, but part of that is these increased concerns around privacy and the increased fragmentation of media. So as I was just listening to you talk about that top of funnel need, I feel like there's a connection there from what you just said towards this second factor.
Yes, the second factor of media fragmentation is a really interesting one, and definitely has influenced our position on how to approach integrated campaign strategies and to also really build close connection between brand and performance campaigns. In recent years, the last 7 years or so, the media landscape has been really fraught with a lot of conversation around this idea of privacy. More and more laws are being enacted around the world and within the United States around privacy and the ability to track data. That has directly impacted for institutions what their targeting and attribution abilities are, and also created a lot of conversation on the front end around who their audience is and what that targeting looks like by platform. You know, we've been heavily impacted in higher ed around the ability to target adults 13 to 17, which is a huge cross-section of that prospective student audience. Those laws going into place, paired with increased audience expectations for privacy, particularly with those Gen Z and Gen A audiences, where we're seeing that come up more and more, really warrants a larger conversation around that brand perception and reputation and how people understand the value of higher education and what they will get out of that overall experience.
So we're hearing from our audience, our users, that they want more privacy. Let's dig into your third factor around audience expectations. Over the last year and a half, it's become increasingly clear that we are just competing for attention, and that is up against our favorite paper towel brands, up against our favorite lip gloss. It doesn't really matter what the brand is. They are delivering a certain experience outside of higher ed, and that is impacting how our students expect our schools to communicate with them, whether that's through a LinkedIn ad all the way to the emails that hit their inbox. I think this is a real challenge for a lot of teams, if I'm just being honest. But let's bring it back to your factors, audience expectations. Let's dig into that one.
Yeah, this is a super interesting factor in audience expectations. First, to really connect it back to the media fragmentation, the first element for audience expectation is this connection between privacy and personalization. So increased demand for privacy, both from the audience and from these platforms and from the government more and more, paired with this increased expectation of personalization, right? And we all know those don't easily go hand in hand, right? They're not necessarily symbiotic. They're typically adversarial. And so it is this really creative balance between the more deeply we understand our audiences and their motivators and their barriers, the more we can leverage creative and messaging to build those connections, particularly, again, at the top of that funnel. Like you mentioned, it's also really interesting that the media landscape has in the past been very distinct by industry and creating these very distinct experiences. And so for higher ed, it hasn't been as challenged as it has been in recent years in how it gets compared to CPG or how it gets compared to really any marketer, any organization or company that is running an ad or creating an experience and building a connection with an audience. And while that does bring a lot of benefit and sort of open the door to how higher ed can interact and engage with audiences today, it significantly amplifies or elevates the expectations that audiences have. And when higher ed institutions have limited resources, either through people, time, or money, right, it creates a really, really big challenge for institutions to understand what is the best use of my time, my people, my money. And so it takes a lot of time up front to really establish an understanding of who are we and what do we represent? Who are our audiences and what are they seeking in terms of output? And what does that middle ground look like?
So I know you wrapped your session up with a little case study, so we'll wrap the podcast up with a little case study too. I think everything you've been talking about, if implemented well, it must work. And I'd love to hear about a success story.
Yes, making that transition and reallocating paid media dollars to other marketing efforts or moving typically performance allocated dollars to brand can be a challenge for a lot of institutions. Many of the partners that we work with today are under a tremendous amount of pressure to deliver immediate results, which is why it makes a lot of sense leaning into performance. Feels like that's the right avenue. Chico State has been an unbelievable partner that we've worked with over the last 3 years. They've been very open to new ideas and looking for that long-term result and impact, which has actually allowed us to identify a number of short-term wins that have delivered tons of valuable data. We started working with Chico State on brand efforts back in 2022 and have gone through 2 full enrollment cycles with them and have really spent that time combining their Marcom and admissions efforts, working with them as one full team, evaluating their MarTech and how that connects to the media channels, organic and paid, and all of their other marketing efforts to build a holistic story for them. What's been really incredible to see is that when we first started working with them on their brand efforts, we started to see immediate results, even on the performance side in terms of quality and leads. While we also were seeing brand lift and build in reputation and perception over time. We were very successful in identifying their high propensity audiences. So doing more than your typical 13 to 17 or 17 to 21 traditional university student in a specific geographic location. We were able to pick up more and more behavioral and contextual elements that identified a high quality or high propensity prospect for Chico State. And that has led to really significant results over the last few enrollment cycles. Chico State has seen an 11% increase in admits and a 28% increase in intent to enroll in their last enrollment cycle. And every data point in this current enrollment cycle is telling us that we're right on track to continue to see not only that brand lift and reputation, perception, and measurement, but also those performance metrics where the prospects that we're engaging with are really engaged, showing a lot of intent, and showing really strong enrollment for fall 2025.
Well, Sara, congratulations on that incredible work with Chico and also on your awesome eduWeb Summit presentation. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with us on the Pulse so that our listeners could get some of these incredible insights. We will drop a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. But any parting thoughts before we wrap up?
I would say my parting thought is marketing is the most interesting and most challenging it's ever been in higher education, for me at least. All of the challenges that the pandemic, that recent protests and world events have created for universities, it's incredibly difficult. There's more opportunity than ever in finding the right distribution of time and resources. So I think the big parting thought is finding the right partners within your institution or outside that are challenging in all of the right ways. It's a great time to be doing that and really drive results both for your teams and for the institution at large.
Incredible. And with that, folks, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.